Good morning, everybody. Welcome to National Careers Week 2021. My name's Sophie Hope. I'm the Senior Business Development Manager at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and I'm part of the Bridge GM team that are organising this Meet Your Future work shadowing campaign. Meet Your Future was launched in April 2019 as an easy way to enable young people to have conversations with employers whilst experiencing different workplaces. Over the past 12 months, we've been speaking with young people from all 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester to find out how you're feeling, how you feel you should be supported through the pandemic, how you feel about your return to school, and then on to into your future. We've been listening and we've learned a lot. We've developed a suite of information, resources and services that are here to help you. All of these can be found on GMAX. You can also speak to any member of the Bridge GM team. We've adapted the Meet Your Future work shadowing campaign to better fit what you've been telling us. Over the last week, we've worked with approximately 40,000 young people who've heard and joined sessions with Greater Manchester and national employers. You'll also hear from notable people about their journey and how they ended up where they are today. In this session, you'll get to do just that with Sean Fielding, Leader of Oldham Council. Hopefully this week you've been informed, you've been inspired, you're feeling a little bit more hopeful about and optimistic about your future in Greater Manchester and all the amazing opportunities available to you. This session, we have 15 minutes. Sean's going to be speaking, talking about his experience, his background, the best thing about his role, and there's lots of opportunities for you to ask questions. There's a Q&A box on your screen, so please feel free to drop any question in there, and we'll be sure to put Sean on the spot and get him to answer those questions. If none of the questions are answered during the session, we can do some follow-up, and we can do that through our new GMAX Twitter account, which is @YourGMAX. So enough from me, and I'm going to hand over straight away to Sean.
Thanks, Sophie, for that introduction, and good morning, everybody. I'm told there's a lot of people on the call, but it's a bit odd because I can't see anybody apart from myself. So I've been invited this morning to talk about my journey to where I am now, which is as Leader of Oldham Council and also as Lead on Employment Skills and Digital across Greater Manchester, as one of the politicians that does leadership on a particular area for our entire city. My journey is not the one that people kind of assume it's been. Lots of people assume that I studied a humanities degree or did politics at university and then found myself, climbing the greasy pole in a political party and to where I am now. But that's not what happened. I've grown up in a place called Failsworth, which some of you may be from or at least familiar with. I went to Paddock Lane South Failsworth Primary School and then on to Failsworth School as it was then. It's Co-op Academy Failsworth now. And then on to Oldham Sixth Form College. And the subjects that I took at the Sixth Form College were physics, chemistry, mathematics, and I took music on the side as well, which was meant to be my DOS subject because I used to play an instrument in a band. And that was meant to break up the sciences. And the reason I did those subjects is because I had intention to go on and be an engineer, and I wanted to go and build motorways and bridges and all that sort of thing. So I actually went on to university after leaving sixth form to study civil engineering in Manchester, and I was sponsored as part of that by the Institute for Civil Engineers, who gave me some cash to make it a bit less expensive to be at university, and also linked me up with a construction firm who would provide a placement at the end of each year and then hopefully a job at the end of the course. So I was at Manchester University, I studied engineering. I got a placement after my first year at Sellafield, which used to be a nuclear power station, but now reprocesses nuclear waste from all around the world. And I went and worked there over one summer building, I think the best way to describe it is a big kettle. Because it's where they dump all the nuclear waste, mix it with a load of water, boil it up and then skim off all the nasty stuff and then put it into storage and bury it in the ground. So I worked on this super secure construction site out in the middle of nowhere in Cumbria, where all the really unpleasant and dirty nuclear waste was sent. And that was really interesting. It was such a bizarre experience to driving every morning past armed guards and have to have your papers checked and your vehicle searched and all that sort of behaviour to ensure that you weren't going in there and getting up to no good or stealing state secrets. So, you know, after the first year at university, it seemed like I'd kind of planned out the trajectory of the rest of my career. Now, I went back to university, and it was around the time when a lot of cuts were being made to infrastructure projects in the public sector, and many of the casualties of those cuts were big construction projects. So it meant that there was less work around for the area that I was going to train in and hope to get a job in. So at the end of my second year, I found that there was no summer placement because the firm that was supporting me said, "I'm afraid we've not got any work for you this year, Sean. Can you just write a bit of a report on anything interesting that you do over the summer, and we'll carry on, you know, giving you the money that we've given you." So I did that. But when I came out of university, I was working part-time at Tesco to support my studies. And because there wasn't a lot of work around in what I trained to do, I went full-time at the supermarket. So things hadn't panned out as I'd kind of planned and, you know, set the ideas for the rest of my life. And I was working full-time at Tesco in Failsworth. So I picked up more hours. I was encouraged to go on the management programme at Tesco, which many people have done and have done very well out of, but I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I kind of sat tight, got involved with the trade union that represented shop workers at Tesco, just to keep my mind active from the monotony of otherwise just filling shelves or beeping things through the till. And through that, ended up becoming involved in politics. So at the time that I became involved in the Labour Party, and I'm a Labour councillor in Failsworth, it was a time when the majority of members were old, the majority of councillors were elderly, and we had a very, very small membership. This was like 2011, 2012. And it was really easy to be encouraged to do more if you were a bit out of the ordinary. And by being in my early 20s, I was out of the ordinary for Failsworth Labour Party at the time. So I found myself being encouraged to stand for elected office, and it was something that I was a bit sceptical about because I thought, do I really want to, you know, tie myself down to doing this? You know, if my skills don't become out of date, maybe I want to go back into working in engineering or construction at some point in the future. So I kind of toyed with the idea of doing it or not. And I stood for election in a place where I knew I wasn't going to win, so it wasn't really a big risk. I stood in a place called Saddleworth, which is not a place that votes for people from my party traditionally. And I lost, but I had quite a lot of fun, you know, delivering leaflets and talking to people about why I thought they should vote for me. And it was particularly challenging because most of them were never going to and couldn't be convinced. And I had some really enjoyable arguments. But then, having kind of made a bit of a name for myself, I was asked to stand in a seat that was more winnable. And again, I thought, do I really want to do this? Do I want to tie myself down to being an elected councillor potentially for quite a long time when I'd always thought I'd do something different? But anyway, I did it. And I was elected to Oldham Council at 22 back in 2012. I had a few different roles on the council, and at the same time I was also working because being a councillor doesn't pay you enough to survive unless you have a senior position like the one that I've got now. So I ended up getting a job that was related to my councillor role, working in the policy department at Tameside Council. Again, something that I'd not really trained for, not expected to go into, but had a really great experience learning about public policy, learning about health inequality, and learning about the public sector and all the work that it does to try and improve people's life chances. And then decided, actually, you know, I'm really interested in this and I want to try and make a bit of a difference for my community. And so I've stuck with it. And I did start to climb the ladder at Oldham Council, and ultimately I found myself being elected leader of the council in 2018. And it is a job that I, despite some of the difficulties that we have, despite some of the challenging people that you have to deal with, I really, really enjoy. You know, I get to help people that need assistance, that have been let down by public services, whether that's with housing cases where they've had trouble claiming benefits or whatever it might be in my little patch in Failsworth that I represent. but I also get the opportunity to speak out on behalf of Oldham and Greater Manchester on TV, in the newspaper. I get to write blogs. I get to meet with developers to try and persuade them to invest money in Oldham to create jobs. I get to meet with a whole range of really interesting and exciting people, and it's a really good experience. So I suppose we've got a bit of time for questions now, and I'll make sure that I shut up, because the favourite thing for politicians to do is to talk about themselves, and I could go on for 20 minutes. But I suppose the lesson from this is, it might not always work out how you planned it, but that's not a bad thing. I'm really pleased where I've ended up. It's not where I would have expected to end up 8 years ago, but I'm really enjoying what I do, and I'm glad that it's all turned out this way. So yeah, things might not always turn out as you planned, but it's not a bad thing. And I'll leave it over to you, Sophie, now to give me any questions that have come in.
Fab, thanks, Sean. We've got so many questions. My screen's going kind of crazy with all of these popping up. There's a couple of fairly challenging ones, but I really like this one. And it's about, you've talked about the kind of your career path and some of the bits that you really like about your role, but what is it that you most like about your role, and is it difficult at the moment with COVID?
Yeah, so as I talked about knocking on people's doors in Saddleworth and having rows about why they should vote Labour when they normally would not, that is something that I really enjoy, because I find it really, it challenges me, and it makes me justify why I think what I think, which I always think is a good thing, to question why you believe what you believe, because it then makes you, better placed and stronger in defending your views. Now, one of the challenges of COVID is that we've just not been able to do that. So we've actually got local elections coming up in May, and I'm standing for election in May, and I've not been able to get out on the doors and talk to people and see what they think, and also make the case for why they should support me. So the biggest challenge is not being able to get the broadest cross section of what people might be thinking about the work that I do and the person that I am. And I have found that really difficult, because the only or the main source of that feedback has been social media, and social media, people only tend to say something if they've got something negative to say. And so we've got quite an unpleasant group of people that are keyboard warriors in Oldham and in Failsworth that just witter on online about how dreadful the council is and how dreadful I am, which is not reflective of the wider view. I mean, people inevitably do think that I'm doing a terrible job and don't agree with what I'm doing, but that's not representative. But it's the only kind of feedback that you get when you're looking on Facebook or Twitter. So that's been the biggest challenge over the last few months.
Ace, thank you. Sounds like you've got to have a bit of a tough skin. Alfie was in really early with his question, and it was, if you were to have any other job but the one that you have now, what would it be? You've talked about engineering and the paths you've had. So are there any other jobs that you think, that's got my name written all over it?
Something that I'd really like to do is I would really like to have been a journalist, because I write a lot of press releases about work that I do and things to try and promote myself. And whilst it's really helpful for me that newspapers often just print them verbatim without changing anything that I've written and without challenging some of the spin that I've put it on it to paint myself in a positive light, I do find that really depressing that the papers aren't offering that kind of challenge. And I think with my sort of insider knowledge of the way local authorities work and the public sector works, I think I could offer something to do the digging, to kind of expose some of the stuff that really needs to be outed so that people can make more informed decisions. So being a journalist is something that I would really like to do if I weren't doing this. I think that you can make such a difference in providing a more balanced view than is at the moment sometimes provided by journalists simply regurgitating press releases that are issued by people like me.
Fabulous, thank you. So we've got 1 minute left. It's flown by. So I'm just going to pop you on the spot, and you alluded to this in your initial talk, but what one piece of advice has been the most kind of influential and supportive for you throughout your career, and and is that the same piece of advice that you'd give to Greater Manchester's young people at the moment?
Yeah. The best piece of advice I had was from a previous leader of the council, so someone who did this job before me, and it was make sure you enjoy what you do, because it will be a battle if you don't. And so I've talked about the challenges of the Facebook unpleasantness. I talked about some of the difficulties that we've had at the council. But actually, every time, you know, I feel a bit down about that stuff, I pull myself back to, why am I doing this? Is it making a difference? And do I actually enjoy it? And the reality is, if you take the 10% of unpleasantness that I have to deal with, I really enjoy meeting developers. I really enjoy meeting investors. I really enjoy helping some people that otherwise would not get help if it weren't for my intervention. And that's what keeps me going through some of the really difficult stuff. So pull yourself back to, you know, is there something in this that you're enjoying? And if the answer is no, and the majority of what you're doing is not enjoyable and it's unpleasant and it's a slog, then find something else to do. and if it had been a slog, I wouldn't have been putting myself down for election in May again. I would have thought, you know what, I'll go off and I'll retrain as being a journalist, or I'll go off and I'll go back to being an engineer. But I'm not doing that. I'm continuing to do this as a result of that piece of advice I was given to find what you enjoy and weigh it against the stuff that you think you don't.
Fab, thank you. I'm so sorry, that's the end of our whistle stop session this morning. Just want to say a huge thank you to you, Sean, for taking the time out of your busy diary to support Meet Your Future this week and all of the activities within National Careers Week. We've got more coming up today, so if you've got the time, please do tune into those. All of them are going to be available for you, so we can send out the links and recordings to your schools and to your colleges. We just want to say huge thank you to all of our presenters this week, and you can keep up to date with all of the work that we're doing on GMAX, which the link is in the chat, but if not, it's gmax.co.uk. And we've got lots of activity going on in Twitter. We've had so many questions come through this morning, so we'll see if we can get some of those up onto our Twitter account as well. But from me, Sophie, and from Sean, and from all of the team at the Combined Authority, just want to say a huge thank you for joining in this morning, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a fabulous weekend.